Hello, everyone. My name is Marlon, and today I want to present a subject that I think is very important for us as a whole when it comes to looking at information and trying to understand stuff that maybe we may see online or on TV. And so this is fallacies and how they can be used to disinform people. And so without further ado, let's get right to it. I first want to try and explain what a fallacy is, and give some example of fallacies that I think are most prevalently used in the media or online. So, what is a fallacy? The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines a fallacy as being an often plausible argument using false or invalid inference. So, what this is trying to say is that sometimes some people will use arguments, be it intentionally or by accident, without them knowing, that are deceptive in nature. So they will use certain false things that give rise to a wrongful conclusion, or may change the perception of a problem into something that is not truly linked to what is being debated or questioned. So I want to talk about some specific fallacies that I think are prominent in the media, as I said. And so let's get to it. So the first one I want to discuss is the false cause fallacy. So the idea behind this fallacy is that some people may attribute a causal relationship between two phenomena that may or may not be linked. So this is the idea of causation and correlation, right? So because two things seem to be pointing towards the same thing, that does not mean that they are linked or have a causal relationship between each other. In order to showcase this, I want to go to some examples. The first example I purposely chose to be very far-fetched, just to showcase how this fallacy works. So the example says, 100% of people who drink water have died. Therefore, drinking water kills people. As it can be seen, this is really not true. And it's just, they're using the fact that drinking water, everyone drinks water and everyone dies. So because everyone drinks water, that's the cause of death. As we can see, this is clearly not true, and therefore this is a deceptive use of a fact in order to push forward a false narrative. One example that I think is more rooted in real life is the following. So more people get stabbed in cities, therefore living in a city increases the chance of getting stabbed. So this is actually true. A lot more people get stabbed in cities than in the suburbs and outside of cities. But I'm with what this fact is not presenting is the idea that way more people live in cities from the start than people that don't live in cities. So because there are more people living in cities, there's an increased chance of there being more stabbings. It is not because you live in a city that your chances are increased, that you have greater chance of being stabbed, but because there are more overall, and there are more people overall in the city as from a statistical point of view will have a greater chance of seeing events of stabbings and stuff like that. So here, this example is showing is that by not showing information or not giving the causal relationship between these two correlated things, which is more stabbings in cities and people living in cities, a false conclusion could be taken out of the statement. And so this is why I think this example is also very telling for this fallacy. Now, if we move on to another fallacy, this is the false dilemma. So the idea behind the false dilemma fallacy is that people present options as being the only possible ones. So the idea of it's either this or it's either that, without giving any possibility for nuance or any possibility of other options that they may be hiding or may not know. So for example, to go to some examples, the famous phrase, you're either with me or against me. This creates a very sharp contrast, right? So if you say this to someone, well, they're going to feel like, well, I'm between two options. I can't do anything. If I don't follow you, well, I'm against you. Or if I'm with you, well, I'm against this other thing, right? This does not show any nuance. So you can either be in between, right? You can have no position. You can be neutral, just simply not want to partake in whatever the dilemma is or whatever the problem is. And so what this example is showing, that by phrasing things in a certain manner, we are creating something that is not truly there. That's hence the false dilemma. It is not truly a dilemma. In this case, you do not need to choose between being either with me or against me. There are other possibilities that I'm withholding from you in order to put you in a position in which you have to choose between these two. And so this is what the dilemma goes to. This is what this fallacy, this is the basis of what the fallacy is. So here's another example, which is either you pursue post-secondary studies or you're unsuccessful. I think that as students, we've heard this a lot throughout our academic career. And so what this example is showcasing is that you either have a success when you go and follow post-secondary studies, or you're simply an unsuccessful person. This, once again, is not giving place for nuance or other options, which is such as getting a job after high school, or maybe not being successful after pursuing post-secondary studies. Also, it doesn't take into account the struggles that someone may have, or the reasons behind why someone is not able to continue post-secondary studies, which may not be linked to how successful or unsuccessful that person may be. So this, once again, this fallacy goes to the idea of presenting two facts or presenting two options as the sole options in a certain problem or a certain case. This is not always true. There's usually, and in most of the cases, more than only two options, because stuff is very complex and life is full of different things. So I think this is very important to understand when it comes to seeing when it comes to seeing examples shown online or on TV, where people may use this sort of language trying to separate or divide ideas into two very distinct camps without giving any room for as I said before, other options. So another fallacy that I think is important to understand is the appeal to ignorance. So the idea behind this fallacy is that if something is not proven false, then it is true, or vice versa, which is that if something is not proven true, then it is false. I like to think of this as being proof by lack of proof, because this, by saying it like this, it really showcases that it doesn't make much sense, right? So the appeal to ignorance is simply saying that because there's no proof for a certain thing, well, you can't either dismiss or prove it as being true. So here are some examples. Once again, let's say alien contact has never been proven, therefore aliens don't exist. Well, even though, depending on what you want to believe, if aliens exist or not, this is not a valid argument to explain why they may not exist. The fact that they have never been seen or never been this alien contact has never been documented does not give proof to the fact that they do not exist fully. It may point in the direction that they haven't come to Earth, or they do not exist, but it does not fully take out the possibility that they do in fact exist. And so this is the idea behind this fallacy. It's like, by presenting the fact that something may or may not exist, right? That is something a plausible idea as being fully true or fully false. You are once again not giving credit to multiple possibilities or things that may not be taken into account. For example, the next example tells us you cannot prove that you're innocent, therefore you're guilty, right? This is once again an erroneous way of thinking, because what you're saying here is that because there's no way you can prove your innocence, you therefore are guilty of what we are accusing you. This does not show that maybe there's just there's just like that the proof of your innocence has been destroyed, or that simply there is no way in which you can prove that you're innocent depending on the circumstances, or it was like something happened and you were the only one there. It does not take those things into consideration. It's just simply saying that because you cannot prove that you're innocent, you must be guilty, which is a bad way in which to approach problems, because once again, it's giving you, or it's proposing that some things are black and white, right? There's some things that cannot be in the gray area, or there are simply no facts that can be proven or disproven by the fact that you can never prove something fully or disprove something fully. And so this fallacy is widely used, I would say, sometimes when it comes to different subjects on the news or different subjects online. And I think it's very important to understand that simply because we have not been able to prove something, it does not mean that that thing is true or untrue. So the next fallacy I want to talk about is the appeal to popularity. So this is one of the fallacies that I think are most prevalent online, especially with the use of social media. The idea behind this fallacy is that if something is popular and widespread, then it must be true or it must be good. I like to call this fallacy. I like to think of this fallacy as being revolving around social truths. And so the idea behind this fallacy is that because the full of society or the group to which I belong to says that what I'm doing or what I think is correct, I must be correct in my reasoning or in my ideas. This leaves out the possibility that the full group may be wrong, and also does not give room for social change or changes in the ways things are done. So if we go to some examples, I'll show where this type of fallacy is used. So if everyone says that the sky is green, therefore the sky must be green. This is once again a far-fetched example in which the claim is clearly not true. But using the appeal to popularity, I'm trying to base my argument and say that it is a valid argument. This is a completely wrong way in which to approach the claim, because it is simply not true to say that the sky is green. Even if everyone on earth believes that the sky is green, at the end of the day, the real fact or the true fact says that the sky is simply not green. And so appealing to popularity is something that a lot of people use, especially, as I said, in social media, to reinforce their points or put pressure on other people to follow their way of thinking or follow their beliefs. For example, if someone says that a practice has been placed for generations, therefore it is a good practice, the person is trying to showcase that because this is the way it has always been done, it must continue to be done in this way because it has to be a good way. This is a type of argument that has been used, for example, when talking about slavery. Before it was abolished, people would say, "Oh, well, slavery has been done for generations, for thousands of years, so it must be a good thing, and it must be an acceptable thing to do in our society." This is a clear example of a place or of an argument in which you're not letting the possibility for more or different points of view because you're appealing to the widespread ideas that are in place in a certain region or in a certain group. This could be very dangerous when alienating people, or what a lot of people refer to as circles or inner circles online, which these people go into, like, what some people say as some people call echo groups, in which some information or some facts are being repeated constantly, and then everyone just takes it as a fact because it is being repeated by everyone and everyone takes it as true. Even if everyone believes that something is true, that does not make it true. That is the basis of the erroneous thinking in this fallacy. This other fallacy is called the false analogy. So the idea behind this fallacy is that if two things share something in common, they must have other common points. So I like to think of this as being a false similarity, in which two things that seem to have something, or that seem to share a common end, must have the same causes. For example, if someone says that, let's say, Alice has a fever and Bob has a fever, and then they conclude that because they both have a fever, they have to have the same disease, you would be very concerned with that conclusion, right? Because this person is not taking into account the possibility of all the diseases that cause a fever. So because they have a common point, right? Alice and Bob have a fever. This person is equating that to, oh, well, they must have the same underlying condition. This is very dangerous when it comes to talking about important things like global warming, like in the next example, which says there have been natural periods of global warming, therefore global warming is caused by natural phenomena. This is, in our current world, this is false, because global warming is not caused by natural phenomena, but by human activity. But some people will try to convince others that because global warming has happened in the past, it must be that then the global warming that we're experiencing right now must be due to the same factors that created those different periods of global warming in the past. They're not talking about what caused those global warmings in the past. They're not giving examples, and they're not. And sometimes these people don't even present the fact that these different types of global warming that occurred a millennia ago did not even have the same underlying causes. So by just giving the idea that, okay, these two things have these two or same points, that they must be the same, is a bad way in which to approach problems in which there can be multiple possibilities or multiple underlying facts that affect that set problem. So if we continue now to other types of deceptions that are not a fallacy in and of themselves, but different things, we can look at, for example, data and numbers. So sometimes people will represent or misrepresent a set of data in graphs or in numbers in order to use a deceptive form of argument. So some people may use statistics without context or background, and what this creates is that it gives just numbers, right? Numbers are very powerful when they're correctly used, but when they're misused, they're also very powerful in leading people to the wrong ideas or the wrong conclusions. So for example, as you can see in this graph tells us the average female height per country, right? And this graph is very weird. If you look at it, well, you see the women in India seem to be half the height of the women in Peru. This doesn't make any sense. But if you look at the axis, right, the axis right here, you see that it does not start at 0, but it starts at 5 feet and goes up to 5'7". And so this is a really bad mispresentation of the numbers, because we're equating 5 feet as being approximately half of 5'4". And so this is clearly wrong. There are other cases in which the axis may be switched, and so instead of going from the lower bound or the lower number, we go to in the direction of a bigger number. The bigger number may be at the bottom, and the lower number may be at the top. So it is important to always look at what a graph is showing, especially when it comes to numbers or column graphs, because this creates in our brain the idea that, well, if this column is bigger than this other column, then there must be a big difference between those two columns, but that may not always be the truth. For example, this is another more of a verbal example. So there have been multiple cases of blood clotting and people after taking the COVID-19 vaccine, and so it must be a dangerous vaccine. This is a misrepresentation of the numbers, or not a misrepresentation, sorry, using the numbers without giving out context. So if I tell you that multiple people have been getting blood clots, you might get scared of taking the vaccine because you're afraid that might affect you. But what I'm not telling you is that throughout the millions of people that have taken the vaccine, only a few of those people have had blood clots. So I'm withholding the information that on the overall big picture, these things are very rare or uncommon. So presenting these numbers without giving out the correct or the important context behind it could be misused to decrease the chance that someone may take a vaccine. So these are actually techniques that are used by anti-vaxxers, for example, or other people that seek to discredit what science or scientists are showcasing, because they use numbers without any background or without explaining what those numbers mean in the greater context. So how can we learn to treat information? So my main tips in order to have a better understanding of information is to not just stop when you're reading something. It's not just stop at the headline, right? Because the headline is only there to give out information. It's just there to attract people at times. It's not there to give out complete details of what is being showcased in an article, what is being showcased in a post. It is important to always look beyond the headline. I always think that it's important also to look at sources that are used in order when giving out information, as well as the images that are being showcased in a given text. If they're really linked to what is being showcased, the date of when these images were taken, where were they taken, by who, in what context, that's important to understand. It's also important to, I think that it's important as well to look at the background of the people that are writing or giving out these information, the different types of information. For example, if let's say someone goes out and talks to an expert in the field of physics when trying to give a piece about medicine, the person that is a physicist is of course an expert in his field, but he's not an expert in the field of medicine. And so the misrepresenting this expert as being an expert in other fields is a way in which to trick people and to think, oh, well, this person is saying this and they have this background and they seem pretty smart, so they must know what they're talking about. That is sometimes not true. And so it is really important to look at the background of people, but also organizations, to see what kind of links they may have to other things, or if they may have other types of biases that could be used, that they may be using when presenting a fact or presenting information. I also think that it's important to apply critical judgment with any case or with anything that comes in front of our eyes, especially when looking at information, or especially when it comes to social media. A lot of things are simply not true, or simply there, or simply placed in order to gain some sort of benefit to the person that is posting the thing, or that is sharing a post or sharing information. So I think that it's important always to be wary, let's say, that you can put it that way, of the things that are presented to us, because we may not always be in the possibility of really getting to the base of all the information, right? Because looking at background of people and really doing research about what we're looking is time consuming, and it's pretty hard at times when we're talking about subjects that are pretty recent. For example, at the beginning of the pandemic, the COVID-19 was not very understood by a lot of people, and so some people took that to come out with conspiracy theories or false ideas about the origin of the disease, or the reason behind this disease. And so it is hard at times to find information about things, but that's why I think it is important to use our critical judgment when approaching information. So yeah, that was my presentation. I hope you liked it. I also hope you were able to gain some valuable information when it comes to looking at information and understanding how to navigate social media, but also posts that are posted on there. And so thank you very much for your time. And I hope this was helpful.